The silent preparations. The Vasher sovereignty had conquered 17 worlds across 3 star systems. Their massive warships had crushed planetary defenses that were centuries more advanced than what Earth could muster. So when the scout vessel SV Pathfinder detected Earth's primitive satellite network and modest defense platforms, the crew couldn't contain their amusement. They're protecting their homeworld with these toys. Commander Tazik chortled, his scaled skin rippling with mirth as he examined the holographic display. Those missile platforms couldn't even penetrate our scout ship's barriers, let alone the capital vessels. Perhaps they believe their isolation has kept them safe, his second-in-command suggested, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Their nearest stellar neighbors are light years away. Not anymore, Tazik replied, sending the reconnaissance data back to the awaiting invasion fleet. Inform the Admiral we found another primitive species ripe for harvesting. 200 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elena Reyes watched the alien scout ship's movements with calculated interest. The 60-year-old physicist had been appointed director of the Global Defense Initiative 15 years ago, when the first faint signals of extraterrestrial civilizations had been detected by deep space listening posts. "They've taken the bait," she remarked to her team, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. The command center was a buzz of quiet activity, staff moving with practiced efficiency rather than panic. Colonel Jackson, her military liaison, frowned at the display. "I still don't like this strategy, Doctor. We're deliberately appearing vulnerable." Elena's weathered face crinkled with a slight smile. "The best trap is one where the prey believes itself to be the predator, Colonel. For 15 years, we've maintained the illusion of normal technological progression, while quietly preparing what they'd never expect." The command center's massive display showed the alien scout ship jumping to faster-than-light travel, disappearing from Earth's sensors. "They'll be back," Elena said with certainty, "and in greater numbers. Initiate Protocol Icarus. It's time to wake the sleepers." Across the planet, in seemingly ordinary homes, businesses, and public spaces, microscopic machines stirred to life. Nanites, billions upon billions of them, had been seeded throughout Earth's environment over the past decade under the guise of environmental remediation projects. Each one was barely visible to the naked eye, but together they formed the most sophisticated defense system humanity had ever created. 3 days later, the Vasher fleet arrived. 7 massive warships, each nearly a mile long, materialized beyond Mars' orbit. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent purple sheen that shifted and rippled, indicating powerful energy barriers. Admiral Zenvac stood on the command deck of the flagship, the inevitable Conquest, surveying the small blue planet on the main viewer. A veteran of countless planetary subjugations, he felt nothing but mild interest at adding another primitive world to the sovereignty's collection. Their primary defenses consist of basic kinetic weapons and low-yield nuclear missiles, his tactical officer reported. Their most advanced fighter craft use fossil fuels. Our analysis indicates they've only achieved spaceflight within the last century. Primitive indeed, the Admiral rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. Send the standard ultimatum. Demand their immediate surrender and resource rights to their planet. If they resist, we'll demonstrate our power on one of their larger cities. Earth's response came swiftly, a volley of missiles launched from orbital platforms. The Admiral didn't even bother to order evasive maneuvers. The primitive weapons couldn't possibly penetrate their shields. "Let them exhaust their arsenals," he ordered. "It will make the conquest easier when they realize the futility of resistance." But as the missiles approached the Vasher ships, something unexpected happened. Instead of detonating against the energy barriers in predictable explosions, they disintegrated into clouds of silvery dust that surrounded the warships. "What is this?" the Admiral demanded, suddenly alert. Analysis. Before his crew could respond, the silver clouds penetrated the energy barriers as if they weren't there, clinging to the ship's hulls. "Impossible," the tactical officer exclaimed. "Our barriers should repel any matter." Elena watched from the GDI command center as the nanite clouds enveloped the alien vessels. Phase 1 successful, she announced. The delivery systems functioned perfectly. Now let's see what our little friends discover. The nanites weren't weapons. They were information gatherers, designed to analyze alien technology and transmit the data back to Earth. For years, humanity had suspected they weren't alone, and rather than building bigger guns, they had prepared to understand any potential threat at the most fundamental level. Aboard the inevitable conquest, systems began failing in cascading sequences. Communications, weapons, and propulsion flickered erratically. "We're being infiltrated," the ship's engineer reported, panic evident in his voice. "Some kind of microscopic machines are interfacing with our systems, mapping our technology, copying our data cores." Admiral Zenvax's confidence evaporated. In all his years conquering primitive species, he had never encountered anything like this. These humans had disguised their true technological capabilities, making themselves appear vulnerable while preparing a sophisticated first strike. "Purge all systems," he ordered. "Electromagnetic pulse throughout the ship. Destroy these machines." The pulse rippled through the Vasher vessels, temporarily disabling the nanites, but the damage was done. Terabytes of data had already been transmitted back to Earth. In the GDI command center, Elena's team worked feverishly to analyze the incoming information. "Their technology is based on quantum crystalline matrices," one scientist reported. "Similar to our theoretical models, but centuries more advanced. And yet fundamentally vulnerable to our approach," Elena noted. "They built walls to keep out armies, not infiltrators. Colonel, prepare the Prometheus array for activation." Colonel Jackson nodded grimly. "The array hasn't been field tested at this scale. The power requirements alone." "Will be met," Elena interrupted. "We've been preparing the power grid for this moment for a decade. Every fusion plant on the planet is ready to channel energy to the array." As they spoke, the Vasher fleet recovered from the initial assault. Admiral Zenvax, his pride wounded and authority challenged, ordered an immediate retaliatory strike. "Target their largest city," he commanded. "Show these humans the consequence of resistance." The inevitable conquest charged its main weapon, a massive particle cannon capable of leveling mountains. Energy built up at the bow of the ship, a swirling vortex of destructive potential. "Energy buildup detected," a GDI officer reported. "They're targeting New Delhi." Elena's expression hardened. "Activate the Prometheus array. Target the flagship's weapon systems." Around the globe, hidden installations hummed to life. The Prometheus array wasn't a conventional weapon, but a network of quantum entanglement projectors. Based partly on technology gleaned from studying cosmic background radiation, and partly on humanity's own innovations, it could create temporary quantum links across vast distances. As the Vasher weapon reached full charge, the array activated. Suddenly, the energy within the alien cannon found itself quantum entangled with the vacuum of space 5 light-years away. The carefully balanced reactions destabilized, and the weapon began to tear itself apart from within. On the inevitable conquest, alarms blared as the main cannon overloaded. "Weapon failure," the tactical officer shouted. "The energy is being diverted somehow." Before Admiral Zenvax could issue new orders, secondary explosions rippled through his ship as the power surged back into other systems. The massive warship listed to one side, emergency systems barely keeping it intact. The other vessels in the fleet moved to defensive positions, their commanders uncertain what kind of weapon could disable their flagship's main cannon without firing a shot. In the GDI command center, Elena allowed herself a small smile. Phase 2 complete. The Prometheus array functions as designed. She turned to Colonel Jackson. "Now, open a channel to the alien fleet. It's time they understood who they're dealing with." The Admiral's face appeared on the command center screen, his reptilian features contorted with rage and confusion. "This is Dr. Elena Reyes of Earth's Global Defense Initiative," she began calmly. "Your fleet has violated our sovereign space, and attempted to attack our civilian population. We have demonstrated a fraction of our defensive capabilities. You have 30 minutes to retreat beyond the orbit of Saturn, or we will be forced to take more decisive action." Admiral Zenvac stared in disbelief. These humans had neutralized his most powerful weapons without revealing their own. What else were they hiding? "This isn't over," he growled before cutting the transmission. Elena turned to her team. "They won't retreat. Not yet. Their pride won't allow it." Her eyes narrowed as she watched the alien ships regrouping. "Prepare for Phase 3. The real test is about to begin." The adaptive response. Admiral Zenvac paced the damaged bridge of the inevitable conquest, rage and humiliation burning within him. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never faced such an embarrassment. These humans, with their primitive satellites and fossil fuels, had disabled his flagship's main cannon without firing a visible shot. "Status report," he demanded. His tactical officer responded hesitantly. "Main weapon systems remain offline. Engineers estimate 8 hours for repairs. Secondary systems are operational, but at reduced capacity. The other vessels in the fleet are unaffected and await your orders." Zenvac's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. These humans are deceivers. Their visible technology is a facade hiding something far more advanced. He turned to his science officer. "What did we learn from those microscopic machines before we destroyed them?" "Very little, Admiral," the science officer admitted. "They were sophisticated beyond our expectations, designed not to attack, but to gather intelligence. They mapped our quantum crystalline systems before transmitting the data back to Earth. And how did they penetrate our barriers?" the Admiral demanded. "Unknown, but our theorists suggest they utilized quantum tunneling on a scale we've never encountered before." Zenvac considered this information carefully. The Vasher had conquered many worlds through overwhelming force, but they had never faced an adversary that used subterfuge so effectively. New tactics would be required. "Disperse the fleet," he ordered. "Multiple attack vectors. No communication between vessels except through secure quantum relays. Launch our ground forces simultaneously on different continents. We'll overwhelm their defense network by forcing them to protect too many targets at once." In the GDI command center, Elena watched the alien fleet's movements with growing concern. "They're adapting faster than expected," she noted as the warships split into smaller groups, heading toward different parts of the planet. Colonel Jackson frowned at the tactical display. "They're launching dropships, thousands of them, heading for major population centers on every continent." "They think we've centralized our defenses," Elena observed. A reasonable assumption based on most military doctrine. She tapped a few commands into her console. "Activate the Gaia Protocol. All regional commanders have full autonomy." The Gaia Protocol was the heart of humanity's defensive strategy. Rather than relying on centralized command and control that could be targeted and disabled, Earth's defenses had been distributed across the planet in a self-organizing network. Each local defense node could operate independently, sharing information with others, but making tactical decisions based on its immediate situation. As the Vasher dropships entered Earth's atmosphere, they encountered no resistance, at first. Then, as they approached their landing zones, the true nature of Earth's defenses revealed itself. In metropolitan areas, seemingly ordinary infrastructure transformed. Traffic control systems rerouted vehicles to create clear evacuation routes. Public transit stations opened concealed bunkers. And most surprisingly to the invaders, civilian devices activated defensive protocols. When the first Vasher troops landed in Shanghai, they expected panicked humans fleeing before their advanced weaponry. Instead, they found the streets nearly empty of people, but filled with ordinary vehicles that suddenly coordinated into mobile barriers. Streetlights emitted targeted electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the aliens' communication devices. Even the pavement beneath their feet became a weapon as nanite-infused materials reconfigured to trap their armored feet. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In Mexico City, the invaders found their energy weapons mysteriously malfunctioning when aimed at humans, but working perfectly against buildings or vehicles. In Lagos, swarms of civilian drones converged on alien dropships, each carrying a payload of the same microscopic machines that had infiltrated their fleet. Admiral Zenvax received increasingly desperate reports from his ground commanders. The entire planet is weaponized. One officer transmitted before his signal was lost. Every device, every structure seems integrated into their defense system. Elena monitored the global situation from the command center, watching as humanity's distributed defense network adapted to the invaders' tactics in real time. Each encounter with the Vasher provided more data, allowing the system to develop more effective countermeasures. They expected us to defend like they attack, with concentrated force, she explained to Colonel Jackson. But we designed our defenses based on Earth's own immune system, distributed, adaptive, and learning from each encounter. But the Vasher were formidable opponents. Despite their initial setbacks, they began to adapt as well. Their troops switched to kinetic weapons when energy weapons proved unreliable. They established jamming fields to disrupt the coordination between Earth's defense nodes. And in orbit, the fleet began systematically targeting power infrastructure, hoping to disable the energy sources for whatever was coordinating the planet's defenses. They're targeting our power grid, an analyst reported. Fusion plants in Europe and Asia are already offline. We're rerouting through backup systems, but at this rate, we'll lose 50% capacity within the hour. Elena's expression remained calm, but her eyes betrayed her concern. They think they've found our weakness. It's time for the final phase. She turned to Colonel Jackson. Activate Prometheus Prime. Authorization code, RAIS Omega 793. The Colonel's eyes widened. Doctor, that system hasn't been fully tested. The risks are necessary, Elena finished firmly. This is what we built it for. Throughout the planet, beneath ordinary homes, offices, and public spaces, hidden systems activated. For 15 years, while maintaining the appearance of normal technological development, humanity had been quietly revolutionizing their understanding of quantum physics. The breakthrough had come not from military research, but from a collaboration between climate scientists and theoretical physicists seeking new energy sources. What they discovered was something no other species had found: a way to harness ambient quantum fluctuations to generate power. Every electronic device on Earth had been subtly modified to include microscopic quantum energy collectors. Individually, each generated negligible energy, but with billions of devices networked together, they formed a planet-wide power grid independent of conventional energy sources. As the Vasher continued targeting power plants, smug in their assumption that they were crippling Earth's defenses, the Prometheus Prime system came fully online. Suddenly, every quantum collector on the planet synchronized, creating a unified energy field that enveloped the Earth like an invisible shield. Admiral Zenvax watched in disbelief as his weapons fire dissipated harmlessly against this new barrier. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," his science officer responded, frantically analyzing readings. "They've generated some kind of quantum field around the entire planet. It's unlike anything in our records." In the GDI command center, Elena addressed her team. For generations, humanity feared that when we encountered extraterrestrial intelligence, we would be hopelessly outmatched technologically. So we took a different approach. Instead of trying to match them weapon for weapon, we developed a system that turns their own energy against them. She turned to the main screen, where Admiral Zenvax's increasingly frantic orders to his fleet could be heard. The Prometheus Prime network doesn't just block their attacks. It absorbs that energy and redistributes it to strengthen our defenses and power our counterattacks. As if to demonstrate her point, the quantum field surrounding Earth pulsed, and concentrated beams of energy lanced out toward the Vasher ships. These weren't random attacks, but precisely targeted strikes at the weaknesses the nanites had identified in the alien vessels. One by one, the Vasher ships lost power, their quantum crystalline matrices destabilized by the very specific frequencies of the human counterattack. The mighty warships that had subjugated 17 worlds drifted helplessly in space, their systems dead or dying. Only the damaged flagship, the inevitable Conquest, remained partially operational. Admiral Zenvac stared at the tactical display in stunned silence as his invincible fleet was neutralized without a single conventional weapon being fired against them. A communication request flashed on his screen. With great reluctance, he accepted it. Belina Reyes appeared before him, her expression not triumphant but solemn. Admiral Zenvac, your invasion has failed. Your ground forces are isolated and contained. Your fleet is disabled. We are prepared to offer terms. The Admiral's pride warred with his duty to his surviving crew. What terms? He finally asked, his voice barely controlled. You will withdraw from our solar system immediately with your surviving forces. You will take with you this knowledge. Earth is not defenseless. We do not seek conflict, but we are prepared for it. The Vasher sovereignty will recognize Earth's independence and sovereignty. Violate these terms, and next time, we won't be so merciful. For a moment, it seemed the Admiral might refuse. Then, shoulders slumping slightly, he nodded. You have won this battle, humans, but the sovereignty spans hundreds of light years. You have made a powerful enemy today. Alina's expression didn't change. We've made a powerful lesson for those who would judge by appearances. Your ships will be allowed to restore minimal power for life support and propulsion. Then you will leave our system and not return. After the communication ended, Colonel Jackson approached Alina. You know they'll be back, don't you? And next time, they'll be prepared for our defenses. Alina nodded, watching as Earth's quantum field gently pushed the disabled alien vessels away from the planet. Yes, but so will we. The data we've gathered from their technology will advance our understanding by decades, and more importantly, they'll spread the word. Earth isn't the primitive, defenseless world they thought. We're something else entirely. And what's that, Doctor? The Colonel asked. Alina smiled slightly. Adaptive. The one thing that has always defined humanity. Our ability to observe, learn, and create unexpected solutions. They came expecting to find another conquest. Instead, they found a species that turned its apparent weaknesses into strengths. As the Vasher fleet limped away from Earth, news of humanity's victory spread across the planet. For the first time in history, all nations had truly worked together, pooling their resources and knowledge to create a defense system that protected everyone equally. What happens now? Colonel Jackson asked as they watched the alien ships disappear into the darkness of space. Now, Alina replied, we prepare. The universe just got a lot smaller, and a lot more interesting. They laughed at Earth's defenses until we revealed our ultimate weapon, humanity itself.